Alright, so once again we are looking at the Projecting X 2.0 Excel spreadsheet, originally developed by Mike Podhorzer of FanGraphs and Tanner Bell of SmartFantasyBaseball.com also contributed a lot to this. And so we're looking at my customized version of that spreadsheet. And so I've customized it a lot and added a lot of different things. And so I wanted to show you one more thing that I just added. And it's related to how players are ranked once you input their projections, and then their projections are either listed on the hitter rankings page or the pitcher rankings page. And then consequently, they get a ranking over here on this side for all the different league types. And so, once again, these league types are specific to the league that I am in. So these numbers that are listed in these formulas up here in all these different cells, they are specific to each different league. And so once again, if you are wanting to figure out what numbers to input into these formulas for your own specific league, I suggest heading over to SmartFantasyBaseball.com and checking out the tutorials that Tanner Bell gives on standings gained points. So the thing with these ranking systems, the standing gains point ranking system, is that it gives you a number. So for instance, looking at Clayton Kershaw here, and it gave me a total of 16.17 standings gained points for this league, Yahoo Gary's league. But the thing is that we need to take into account replacement level players, because what we're actually wanting to do is to figure out the value of a player over someone you could easily pluck off of the waiver wire. So what I've gone and done is I added this gray tab here, replacement level, and I inserted a couple different tables here, one for the hitters and one for the pitchers. And I made it to resemble the rankings page by separating, color coding these different leagues that I am in. Now, this idea as a whole is not something that I developed on my own. I got a lot of my information from Tanner Bell and his website, SmartFantasyBaseball.com. And so in these videos, I'm just kind of showing you how I implemented a lot of these different ideas into my spreadsheet to customize it how I want it to be. But then there are also some things that I did incorporate myself. So what we would do on this page here is we would try and find the replacement level type of player for each position, and then but also we got to do it for each different type of league, because all these leagues have different settings, whether it's a different amount of teams or a different amount of players that are in starting lineups. So each league is different. And so if you're in a 2-catcher league, for instance, you know that there's going to be 24 catchers that are drafted. So the 25th ranked catcher in your rankings would be kind of the replacement level type of player. But to get a better average for that replacement type level player for each position, instead of just taking that replacement level player that you find, it might be a better idea to average out that replacement level player and the 2 players that are ranked above and below him. So you would get the average standings gained points for that replacement level player for a position, and then you would input it in each of these rows for each of the leagues that you are in. But that's not really something we can do until you finish ranking. Actually, I'm sorry, until you finish projecting all the players that you believe are going to be drafted in your league. So right now I don't have my projections all done, and so I can't input any substantial data into these boxes here. And so I'll just pick some arbitrary numbers just for an example. So just really quickly, we're going to hop over to the hitter rankings page, and right now I just have Mike Trout projected in there. And so we'll take a look at his standings gain points for Yahoo Gary's League here, and you can see how it breaks down for each separate category that's accounted for in this league. And summing that all up, he's at 23.26 right there. And so that's the sum without accounting for a replacement level player yet. So we're going to jump back over to the replacement level tab, and so we're doing Yahoo Gary's League right here. And so since Mike Trout's an outfielder, we're going to do outfield right here. And so once again, I'm just going to input some arbitrary numbers. These numbers are not the actual numbers that I will end up putting in. So I'm just going to put in 1 for average, 2 for home runs, 3 for RBI, 3 for run, 1 for stolen base, and -2 for strikeouts. Okay, and so once again, this is the average standings gain points per category for the average replacement level player at a position. Since input those numbers, we can hop on over back to the hitter rankings page, and we're going to see that Mike Trout's total ranking number has changed. So it indeed has changed, and it's gone down to 15.26. And so that is his value over a replacement level outfielder. And so now these rankings, they're going to end up reflecting better for position scarcity. So there's going to be positions that are more shallow than others, meaning that there's not as many quality players at that position. So for instance, catcher is the most shallow position in fantasy baseball. So if we were wanting to compare Buster Posey to, say, Mike Trout and see how he ranks up to Trout, then these rankings now would more accurately reflect how Posey compares to Trout. And so another thing to consider has to do with multi-position eligible players. So when we want to calculate how a player ranks over a replacement level type of player, and that player happens to be multi-position eligible, we need to figure out what position is more shallow that that player is eligible at, because it's at that most shallow fantasy position that he's eligible at that he's going to have the most fantasy value. For instance, Kyle Schwarber of the Cubs, he is eligible at both catcher and outfield in most fantasy leagues, if not all fantasy leagues. And as previously mentioned, catcher is the most shallow fantasy position in fantasy baseball. So when Schwarber's ranking comes up over here, we want it to reflect the fact that he's a catcher and not an outfielder. But the problem is that on this replacement level tab, we're only listing single positions. We cannot list multi-positions in that column. So we have to associate each player with just a single position in each type of league. So what I've done here is I added a few more columns. So I added this E column right here, which is titled Yahoo POS for position shallow. Then I added this column here, CBS position shallow, and this column here, standard position shallow. And from there, so I just looked at the corresponding column. So for Yahoo position shallow, I was looking at this Yahoo position column. And so I went down the Yahoo position column, and for any player that had multiple positions listed, I typed into the E column, Yahoo position shallow, I typed in the most shallow fantasy position that that player was eligible for. And so I did the same thing for this column here and this column here. And so the fantasy positions from most shallow to least shallow for hitters would go in the order catcher, shortstop, second base, third base, and then first base and outfield are pretty equal. And so for any player that was eligible at both first base and outfield, I just listed as first base. So in these formulas, in these columns, you can see that right here, it's recognizing the Yahoo position shallow in this column and corresponding it to the position listed here. So I'm going to go ahead and hide these columns, the shallow position columns, because we really don't need to be having them visible, but just know that they are there. And so when it comes time to edit it again, you can just unhide it. And so the same goes for pictures as well. You can see right here that I added a Yahoo shallow position column. So for any pitcher that was eligible at both starting pitcher and relief pitcher, I just made them a relief pitcher, since relief pitcher should be more shallow. So you can go ahead and hide this column, but it's going to work the same way. So with the formulas, it's going to refer to the replacement level part over here. And that's all for how that portion of the spreadsheet functions.